So being a police officer for the LAPD for 20 years had me thinking a certain way. And then when I made the transition to owning my own business, I had to reframe a lot of those things. This includes my thought of trading time for money, which as a police officer is something you do, but you definitely don't do when it comes to business. Plus, can you just imagine the type of energy that I would be bringing into my business if I treated it the same as I did police work? What would it be like if I brought that kind of energy to my family? Now, you're going to hear me say this a lot on the channel, and as modern leaders, we see things differently. And yes, this also includes the transition between a career and a business, but it also includes any other transition when you're leading people, including your family. Now, when I've taken time to break down the principles that have really helped me the most, I find there's 3 general areas where leaders need to think differently. Now, I also find there's one common pitfall that leaders get into, and it's a very hard space to get out of. So be sure and watch to the end so that you can avoid that too. So let me hit up the first bucket, and it's what leaders do less of. They do less criticizing, they lead with zero judgment or shame, and they do less daydreaming without action. Now, if you've ever been led by somebody who either uses a lot of criticism, judgment, or shame, or just daydreams but never puts anything into action, you know what it feels like to be led by somebody like that. And sometimes having this conversation with ourselves is a tough one, but I really want you to ask yourself, what types of leaders do I love to follow, and how do they see things differently? You'd be amazed at some of the things you're able to learn from that, especially when it comes to the things they do less of. Now, the second bucket is things that leaders do more of. They show more appreciation, more focused vision with a plan, more free space to think. They ask for more feedback to continue getting better, and they provide more hope that it's possible for others too. We're reading this powerful book inside of our book club. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it talks a lot about the power of appreciation, of gratitude, and why it's best to always make it about the other person. What's crazy is that even if somebody is struggling in an area, you can find something that you can acknowledge and appreciate about them. And because you brought them up, they'll be more inclined to continue to do that thing. A lot of times it can even stop them from doing that thing that you don't want them to do. That's why it's always best to lead with acknowledgement and appreciation. I'm sure a few leaders come to your mind that when they acknowledge and appreciate you, you're willing to follow them anywhere. This leads us to our third bucket, which is what leaders think about. Now, those first 2 buckets had to do what leaders do or do less often. And that's a great place to start. But really taking a deeper dive and seeing how leaders think is how you'll be able to get yourself to do those first 2 buckets so much more seamlessly. Now, the best leaders that I follow are focused on solutions, not the problem. Being a life coach, I understand that you get more of what you focus on. And if you're focused on what's broken, wrong, or missing, you're going to find more of what's broken, wrong, or missing. But if you're also focused on finding solutions, finding a new way, how could we excel at both? You're actually going to be able to find out answers outside of the box that you would have never found out if you had been focused on the problem. Now, how can you do this where you're focused on the solution rather than the problem? I have a few questions to help you out. These are all real great ways to reframe the things that you or your team are struggling with. Question number 1. How can I ask myself or others a question that will bring out the best in everyone? Question number 2. How can I take more action, less overthinking, and trying to focus less on perfection? Number 3, how can I start making more decisions and less waiting for things to happen on their own? And lastly, and the most important one of all, is how can I take more extreme ownership and stop blaming others, including myself? This is about controlling the things that you can control. So I gave you a list of questions to help you start to reframe those things that come up while you're leading. And that's the power of seeing things differently. But there is a big trap that I talked about in the beginning, and I want to make sure that you don't fall into it. You see, I found the biggest pitfall is the people that we spend the most time with. If you're focused on hanging around with others, or just by default you're doing it, and they're constantly talking about what's broken, wrong, or missing, it's very contagious and it's going to affect you and your leadership mindset as well. That's why it's critical to make sure you surround yourself with a team full of leaders. And the second part, which is developing other leaders to join you in that room. Now, you might get to this point and wonder how some leaders speak so others will listen so you can help them stay motivated and taking action for the long term. Don't worry, I got you covered. Tap the screen to watch this next video. How leaders speak so others will listen. Thank you for what you do out there every single day and being willing to see things differently. The world needs you now more than ever. And above all, keep leading from the front, leader. Bye.